Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
And humans did not climb to the top of the chain because of claws, teeth, or armor. And they climbed because of the mind's capacity to lock onto a single objective and refuse release. Long before steel, before kingdoms, and before machines, survival was endurance. A hunter would step into the wild with little more than a sharpened stick, a few others at his side, and a target. The prey could run faster, hide better, fight harder, but the human brain had one weapon that tilted the balance: hyperfocus. And to track for hours, then days, while ignoring hunger, thirst, and pain was not madness. It was the only way to eat, and this ability to become obsessed with a moving target is written into the blood. And it explains why you can suffer through fatigue when the goal is clear. It explains why you can tune out noise when something matters enough. And it is the echo of ancestors who refused to stop walking because stopping meant death. And the same mechanism that kept you alive in the wild now waits for you to direct it in a world without predators. Think of what that focus meant, and following tracks in dust that the wind was trying to erase, reading broken twigs as if they were letters in a book, and knowing how to notice a shift in bird calls that revealed the presence of a hidden animal. And hours became background noise because all attention was nailed to one pursuit. The hunter did not check distractions, did not wander, and did not forget why he had started. He was a living arrow aimed at one source of survival. When you look at modern life, that same structure exists, and only dulled. You call it obsession when someone repeats an action, sharpens a skill, or hunts a result with unblinking attention. But what you call obsession today was once the most natural state. Hyperfocus was not celebrated. It was necessary. The reward was food. The cost of failure was hunger gnawing at bone. Survival obsession was not just physical. It reshaped the brain itself. And those who could sustain attention passed on their line. Those who scattered attention vanished. And you are alive because your ancestors mastered focus under pressure. That inheritance lies dormant until you command it. And when you feel the urge to quit, it is not laziness you are fighting, it is the rust of an unused survival tool. Hyperfocus is still in you and waiting to be summoned. The problem is not that it disappeared, the problem is that modern comfort has no demand for it. That a fridge full of food does not require you to track. A city with laws does not require you to hunt. But your brain has not forgotten, and it only sleeps. When you wake it with a mission that matters, the body remembers how to endure. Obsession is treated like a defect today, and yet history proves it was the reason humans endured. Lions could hunt for minutes. Wolves could track for hours. Humans could track for days. And that margin of endurance carved the difference between extinction and dominance. Obsession meant you ignored the bruises on your feet, and the sun blistering your skin, the weakness of your muscles. You pressed forward because the prize was survival itself, and translate that into today and the equation is the same. And obsession with the right pursuit means you cross distances that casual effort will never touch. While others get bored and drift, you remain. And while others scatter attention, you gather it. You survive not against beasts, but against mediocrity. And hyperfocus builds a kind of clarity that no other state provides. When the hunter was locked onto his prey, everything else became irrelevant. Time dissolved. Discomfort became background static. The chase was all that remained. That tunnel far from madness, and is the highest form of sanity when the mission matters. To live scattered is to dilute the power of the mind, and to live obsessed is to return to the original design. You are meant to chase, not to drift. The ancestors who drifted are gone, and their stories ended with empty stomachs. The ones who obsessed became your bloodline. Consider how obsession changes perception. A man without obsession sees trees. A man with obsession sees paths through them. A man without obsession feels exhaustion. A man with obsession feels distance closing. The world shifts depending on what you decide to lock onto. That is why obsession feels supernatural, and it sharpens the dull and makes the impossible tolerable. The mind that can cling to one thread for days has the ability to remake reality. And that is not luxury, that is heritage. But like any heritage, it rots if left unused. When survival was on the line, obsession was not questioned, and it was honored. The tribe trusted the hunter who could lock onto prey and not release until victory was in hand. His obsession meant their children ate. His refusal to quit meant their elders lived another day. He was proof that obsession was service. In today's world, you are told to balance, to loosen your grip, to scatter your time. But balance never fed the tribe, and balance never caught the prey. Only obsession did. Only obsession can still carry you through the deserts of mediocrity that surround you now. And hyperfocus does not guarantee comfort, it guarantees arrival. The hunter did not know how long the chase would last, but he knew that the finish line existed. That trust is the core of obsession. You may not know when the work will break open, and when the opportunity will arrive, when the world will notice. But you know that the chase has a target, and that target will fall if you refuse to quit. This is survival obsession dressed in modern clothes. The prey is no longer an animal, and the prey is your vision. Those who mock obsession mock the very trait that made their existence possible. And they would not be alive without ancestors who locked on and refused to release. And to master the art of obsession is to honor the very mechanism that built humanity. The truth is simple. Without obsession, and you collapse into distraction. With obsession, you outlast. The line that separates the remembered from the forgotten has always been the same. And who was willing to lock onto the target long enough for it to finally fall? An obsession is the furnace that melts down the ordinary until only the extraordinary survives. And it is not a polite guest that enters your mind and leaves when asked. It is a force that takes hold, demanding every corner of your attention and stripping you of illusions of balance and moderation. To master obsession is to accept that greatness will never belong to the scattered. A divided life creates divided results. Obsession narrows the aperture of your existence until all light burns through one point. And that intensity creates fire. That fire creates change. Without obsession, effort remains lukewarm, trapped in the realm of potential. And with obsession, effort transforms into inevitability. The world bends to the man who refuses to bend away from his pursuit, and history remembers not those who dabbled, but those who allowed obsession to remake them. The path of obsession is not glamorous in the beginning. It is lonely, brutal, and misunderstood. People will call you consumed, unhealthy, unbalanced, and they will not understand that balance is a word invented to comfort the mediocre. Balance is for those who fear the cost of true devotion. And obsession demands sacrifice, and sacrifice terrifies those who want everything without paying for anything. When you step into obsession, and you step into fire willingly, knowing it will burn away distractions, comforts, and even relationships. And what remains after the burning is not ruin but purity. Purity of focus, purity of will, purity of vision. And those who mock obsession today will one day praise it when they realize the fruits of their balanced life could never compare to the legacy born of your relentless fixation. An obsession changes your relationship with time. Hours become meaningless because you no longer measure your day in leisure or comfort, and you measure it in progress toward the pursuit. The clock fades, the calendar dissolves, and only forward momentum remains. And this is why obsession seems unnatural to those who watch from the outside. They cannot comprehend how you work through exhaustion, and how you stay with the task when boredom gnaws, how you refuse to rest when there is more to do. But to the obsessed, this is not effort, and this is existence. The task becomes the air you breathe. Without it, life suffocates. With it, you endure storms others would not survive. And to master obsession is to weaponize biology. The human brain was designed to survive by locking onto prey, and to track it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. That same circuitry still lives in you, dormant until activated. Obsession awakens it. It turns your thoughts into hunters, stalking the goal without pause. Every distraction is noise. Every obstacle is just terrain on the chase, and those who fail are not weak but unfocused. They scatter their attention across trivialities and wonder why progress never comes. And obsession teaches you to starve every impulse except the one that leads you forward. It teaches you to narrow, to cut, to become singular. And that singularity is not madness, it is evolution. The price of obsession is misunderstood because the world hides its admiration in scorn, and they will say you are too driven, too narrow, too extreme. And yet those same mouths will later celebrate the outcomes of obsession when they benefit from them. They will read the books, use the inventions, admire the art, live in the systems built by men and women who ignored their warnings. The truth is simple. The world belongs to the obsessed, and the comfortable inherit nothing but regret. To fear obsession is to fear your own potential, and to master it is to face the truth that everything meaningful requires consumption. You cannot remain untouched and still touch the heavens. And there is a silence in obsession that terrifies the average mind. It is the silence of a man who no longer seeks distraction. While others scramble for entertainment, he sits with the task until it bends. That silence is louder than noise. It signals power, and it signals inevitability. It signals that he has crossed into a place most cannot follow because they lack the stomach to endure the void. And in that void, flow emerges. In that void, the impossible becomes routine. Obsession transforms time, space, and energy into allies. And those who stop short never see this. Those who remain see miracles. Mastering obsession also means mastering pain. And pain is the price of extended focus, and the obsessed learn to pay it gladly. Discomfort becomes the toll you hand over to cross into greatness. Most flee when it arrives, calling it a sign to quit. The obsessed interpret it as a gatekeeper. To endure is to be worthy. To quit is to be forgotten. Every legend carried scars of obsession. They did not endure despite their fixation. They endured because of it. An obsession gave them the resilience to keep walking long after others sat down. Pain without obsession breaks you. Pain with obsession builds you. And obsession is the architect of destiny. People call it fate when a man refuses to let go of a vision, and years later, and the world watches him succeed. They say he was chosen. They say it was written. But what was truly written was his refusal to release the pursuit, and his refusal to scatter his focus, his refusal to live balanced. Destiny is simply obsession carried to its conclusion, and when you refuse to let go long enough, the world bends to your hand. Culture dresses it in prophecy. In reality, it is nothing more than a man or woman willing to pay the price obsession demands. To master obsession is to master clarity. Every action you take is judged against the pursuit. If it feeds it, you keep it. If it starves it, you cut it. There is no confusion and no wasted energy. Life becomes binary, yes or no, forward or backward, survival of the obsession or its death. And in that simplicity lies freedom. And you no longer waste energy debating trivialities. You know where you are going. You know what must die to get there. And that clarity makes the obsessed untouchable. They cannot be bribed with distractions because they no longer see them. And they cannot be stopped by noise because they no longer hear it. And flow is a state people romanticize, yet few ever enter. They want the ease, the effortless rhythm, the sense of time dissolving, but they are unwilling to face the gate that guards it. Flow requires immersion, And immersion demands you abandon the surface, and you cannot glance at the task and hope to be pulled under. You must step into it with the willingness to drown, and obsession is what holds your head beneath the surface long enough for the magic to happen. Without obsession, you break too early, and you retreat to distraction before the door opens. The threshold into flow is not immediate. It resists you, tests you, dares you to endure boredom and discomfort and the pull of easier pleasures. The majority fail here. They scatter attention, chase novelty, and never stay long enough to be consumed. Flow rewards only those willing to stay until resistance collapses. To understand flow, and you must understand friction. The first minutes of work are rarely smooth, they grind, and the brain resists entering a state of singularity because it has been conditioned to fragment. Notifications, conversations, and endless temptations of the modern world have rewired attention to seek release at the first sign of struggle. And that is why so many never experience flow at all. They give up at the very moment they should push further. This is where obsession enters. And obsession is the anchor that stops you from drifting away. It is the voice that says keep going when every other instinct screams stop. It is not passion. It is not excitement. It is the relentless refusal to release your grip on the task. And that refusal is the only way to break through friction and slip into the current. Once inside, flow bends time itself. Hours pass like minutes, and not because the task is easy, but because the self dissolves into it. The chatter of doubt, the weight of fatigue, and the itch of distraction fade into silence. What remains is pure execution, uninterrupted and alive. This is why flow feels intoxicating. And it is not relaxation. It is total alignment between will and action. Yet without obsession, you cannot reach this place, and flow cannot be summoned on command. It must be earned through persistence in the moments where it feels unreachable. And obsession is the fuel that carries you through the resistance until immersion swallows you whole. Consider the athlete who trains beyond exhaustion. His body resists, his mind pleads for mercy, yet obsession keeps him moving. And somewhere past the pain, he finds the zone. His body becomes automatic, his decisions seamless, his effort almost transcendent. This is flow, and an obsession was the bridge to reach it. The same is true for the writer who stays at the desk, and the artist who refuses to stop until the canvas breathes, the strategist who studies the game until the moves unfold without hesitation. And flow does not belong to the gifted, it belongs to the obsessed. Discipline can carry you to the table, but it will not hold you there when resistance rises. Motivation can spark your start, but it burns out before the threshold. And only obsession has the weight to keep you locked in place when every muscle in your mind wants to flee. That is why obsession has always been misunderstood. People fear it because it consumes. But that consumption is what makes flow possible. And you cannot halfway enter immersion. You cannot dip your toe in and expect the current to take you. You must throw yourself in entirely. And an obsession is the force that ensures you do not climb out too soon. Flow is not kind to the casual. It rewards the relentless. And it reveals itself not to those who wish, but to those who demand. The truth is brutal. If you cannot endure the discomfort that comes before flow, and you will never taste it. If you do not let obsession drive you past the wall, you will always remain on the surface. Flow is earned in the grind, and not in the wish. You may think obsession makes you excessive. In reality, it makes you eligible. The threshold into flow is guarded by boredom. You will feel it as you begin. The task will feel heavy, your mind will resist, and the temptation to quit will rise. This is the test, and if you stop here, you will never find the state you crave. Obsession is what keeps you moving forward through the desert of monotony. And each step feels dry, but obsession pushes until suddenly, without warning, the desert breaks into a river. You slip into the current, and the current takes you further than you imagined. Without obsession, you would have turned back at the first mile. With obsession, and you reach the water. Flow is sacred because it reveals what you are capable of when scattered energy disappears. And entire books can be written in a single night. Entire strategies can be formed in one sitting, and entire breakthroughs can occur when you are no longer pausing to think about the pause. But this state is not an accident, and it is the prize for obsession. You must be willing to give yourself so fully to the task that the world fades. Obsession is not the enemy of flow, and it is the requirement. The more you experience flow, the more you realize obsession is not a curse. It is a compass. It points you toward the work that deserves immersion. Not every task can hold you. Not every goal can keep you submerged. And obsession reveals which pursuits are worthy, because only those aligned with your nature will let you enter flow. And this is why mastering obsession matters. It not only unlocks the state, it teaches you where your true calling lies. Every culture, and across time and land, has written stories about heroes. At first glance, they appear to be about strength, courage, or divine favor. But if you strip away the ornaments, what lies beneath is obsession. And Odysseus's return to Ithaca was not simply a journey across seas and islands. It was an obsession that consumed decades. And 10 years of war were followed by 10 years of wandering, but the thought of home never left him. Every temptation tried to break his focus. Sirens sang, goddesses offered immortality, storms tried to crush him. Yet he clung to the single obsession of stepping back into his own halls, and that was his true weapon. Not the sword, not cunning, but an unrelenting fixation that would not allow him to stop. That is why his story survived, and because in his struggle, we recognize that it is obsession that carries a man through endless resistance. Prometheus's tale is another mask over the same truth. He defied the gods not out of whim, but because fire burned in his mind long before it burned in human hands. He could not release the thought that humanity deserved more, and that fixation became his rebellion. He knew the punishment would be eternal. He knew the eagle would return day after day. Yet he acted anyway, because obsession is stronger than fear. Culture calls him a bringer of light, but in reality, and he was an obsessed figure who valued the pursuit of fire more than his own peace. This is the root of myth, not morality, not balance, an obsession elevated into legend. Achilles stands as the most blatant example. He was not driven by love of life, and he was driven by the obsession with glory, with a name that would echo beyond death. His entire identity bent toward this single fixation. And he fought not because he had to, but because he could not stop himself from chasing the shadow of immortality through reputation. And obsession disguised itself as destiny, but the truth is simpler. He chose to feed the fire until it consumed him. And even his downfall was born of obsession, for nothing else could have lured him into battle but the thought of eternal remembrance. And this is what culture wraps in noble words. They call it fate, prophecy, legacy. But underneath, and it is obsession shaping a man until he is unrecognizable to the ordinary. Look at any myth and you will see the same architecture, and Jason and the Golden Fleece, Gilgamesh in pursuit of eternal life, Hercules completing his labors. None of these were balanced, calculated ventures. They were obsessions given flesh. Without obsession, the stories would vanish, and a casual Hercules does not endure 12 labors. A half-hearted Gilgamesh does not rage against mortality. A distracted Jason never leaves his home. And these characters become immortal in story because they were willing to give themselves entirely to an obsession. And what was once called madness is remembered as heroism. Obsession is what makes culture whisper the word destiny. Destiny is not a map written by unseen hands. It is the rewriting of reality by a mind that refuses to let go of one pursuit. And When a man is consumed, when every choice, every action, every sacrifice bends toward the same point, others mistake it for fate, and they say he was chosen. They say it was inevitable. But the truth is that inevitability is forged by obsession. When you never release the target, when you never betray the path, you make destiny real. Even modern heroes carry the same mark. Scientists who give their lives to discovery, and leaders who reshape nations. Artists who drown themselves in creation. None of them arrived by accident, and they arrived because obsession turned their lives into arrows that could not bend. Every sacrifice they made was painted as necessary, but the core truth remains. They were willing to give up everything because they could not stop themselves from chasing one vision. The world later names it destiny, but it was always obsession. The lesson is buried beneath the poetry of myth, and it tells you that to leave an imprint, you cannot dabble, you cannot wander. You must commit to obsession with the same fire that lit Odysseus and Prometheus Achilles. The world may mock it while you live. They may call you reckless, narrow, consumed. But history will name you legendary, and because nothing great has ever been built by balance. Greatness is born of singularity. Without obsession, your story is not written, and you remain part of the blur.